I got more shipping boxes from
Oh.
Amazon. And okay, so like how Amazon, you basically rarely can get the same thing twice. Like if it's like, a weird thing, right? Like, like some shipping boxes or some random items sold by like a company with all capital letters in their name. So I got new shipping boxes because there's a few more things to ship out, right? For the patrons. And the boxes I got are from the brand Petaflop.
Okay.
Petaflop. So yeah, when future patrons of the world, when you get a box from me, know that it came from Petaflop.
Isn't petaflop like the biggest thing that a computer can do? Like the most computations like that? They're like, we're going to measure in like as many flops as possible. And you said that this company called Petaflop makes boxes?
I mean, they likely also make any number of things.
All that computing power to make boxes. I see.
Let's see what else Petaflop sells.
Oh, let's not do that.
Okay. Well, they have picture frames.
Okay.
They have a lot of picture frames. They have a mirror. They have gift boxes. They have T-shirts that just say Petaflop on them, and so I definitely have to rep Petaflop.
You're gonna rep the flop
on the wild.
Rep for the
flop.
patrons, right? Instead of sending them Dive Down merch, you just send them Petaflop merch.
Yes.
Oh, I do have an announcement, Devon. I would like to.
Yep.
I'm so excited to announce that we have been acquired by Petaflop Inc. Actually, the Dive Down's now a wholly owned subsidiary of Petaflop.
Hashtag sponsored.
Yeah.
Hashtag sponsored. Yeah. So along with the Dive Down, you can also get yourself some vintage metal outdoor seating sets, some bathroom cabinets.
Well, Petaflop really does sell everything.
Like I'm telling you, man, these companies, they do everything and more.
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to episode 243 of the Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Shane here in Denver, Colorado. With me on the line from Massachusetts, it's the one and only Devon O'Donnell, aka Doomwake.
It's me. What's up, Shane?
Devon, welcome back.
It's been a week.
Yeah, go on.
Some stuff. Well, actually, I don't think I mentioned this the last time we were here. We had a sub goal in place last week, and we did hit the sub goal, which means I just booked a flight last minute to Orlando. I'm leaving this Friday, actually. It turns out not the best idea to wait till 5 days before to book a flight, but learn my lesson.
Are you on like Spirit?
Frontier, actually, which I guess is the next worst thing.
I fly Frontier a little bit more often than I'd like to out of Denver, and I haven't had good luck, but I just feel like that's just airlines these days. It's never that great.
Devon, do you have to go play Magic in the Magic Kingdom? Is that why, or what's going on?
Well, believe it or not, I'm actually not going to play Magic. I'm going to play a different card game.
What card game is that?
It's a little one you may have heard of it called Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah. I've been getting into some old school Yu-Gi-Oh. There's a format called Edison. It's like, if you know what pre-modern is, it's effectively Yu-Gi-Oh's version of pre-modern. And
Yeah, that sounds up your alley.
been playing a lot of it. I'm a boomer, so there's a lot of nostalgia with the old cards and getting to play with those again. It's so much fun.
Is Exodia in there? Is it Exodia a thing?
No. I think it's legal, but nobody plays it. But yeah, they're having like a really, really big tournament down in Orlando, probably the biggest Edison tournament this year. And I wanted to go, and thankfully we hit the sub goal, so I'll be there.
It was that Dive Down retweet. That's what it was. Okay, so I want to ask about Yu-Gi-Oh, because there's only 12 pages of notes, so that's only what 80 to 90 minutes. So
Right.
I gotta
So
fill
you're
this
gonna do
opener.
a tight 15 on Yu-Gi-Oh now?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so what I heard about Yu-Gi-Oh, and I want to check this take, is that competitive Yu-Gi-Oh right now is you do win in one turn, but that the games of Yu-Gi-Oh are all about kind of getting yourself in a position to win in that one turn. Like there's a lot of like sort of dodging and feinting on your way to get there. Is that true? Where it's like, you just sort of stop your opponent and then you go off all in one turn typically, or is that only a certain type of format of Yu-Gi-Oh?
I think most of that is like the newer formats. I think what they call like their version of standard is called traditional. And I think that's a lot of what that is with like some of the newer cards that are a little bit more pushed. But honestly, with Edison format, it feels a lot more like there's a lot of plotting. It's the games usually last about 4 or 5 turns. It's not over in just one turn. And there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of like it's so much fun. I love it so much. A lot of like, just like a lot of strategy involved. Not as much like the combo stuff.
Got it. Well, it's good to play games that you love, Doom. We also do have the Godfather Dave Harburger here.
My new name is Exodia.
Okay, we have Exodia.
Yeah, my dad actually sold a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh cards at the shop towards the end. I don't know have you been on when I've talked about the fact that I had a magic store, like my family had a magic store in the 90s. Yeah.
We all know Dave.
That's right. So, but towards the end, so we went through a Magic phase, and then it went through a Pokemon phase, and then at the end, it went through a Yu-Gi-Oh phase, definitely. And I remember my dad was very excited because he had like foil Exodia, all the pieces in like this is like 2002 or 3. I remember him talking about it, and I was like, cool, I guess. At 5 pieces to a single guy.
Was your dad playing Yu-Gi-Oh with the kids?
No, I think he just knew that it was worth a lot of money or something. So he was excited about it.
Speaking of things worth a lot of money and worth your money, we have, of course, our sponsor Heavy Play we're going to talk about. A newer, not new at this point, card gaming accessories brand that'll improve your gameplay and your game day. Of course, we have the playmats. We have the deck boxes. We have the dice boxes. We got the card sleeves, all featuring enhanced ergonomics, enhanced mobility, enhanced protection. The thing that we Dave,
I'm
shaking that dice box.
Getting my dice box out, and you got to do the noise. There's the noise. Snap it in.
Oh, the noise, the Equip Mag noise. The feel of the Equip Mag is what I like the most, where it's just like... That's the noise magnets make when they snap together. You can, you snap the boxes together, you snap them to your playmat, you carry the playmat around, whatever the heck you want to do. You can carry it all in a single hand. So these are potentially at your LGS or a nearby gaming store of some kind. Or you can shop at heavyplay.com, and if you do, you can use code TheDiveDown2023 for 10% off of your first order at Heavy Play. So thank you, Heavy Play, and thank you all you listeners. I know people keep showing like shipping boxes on the Discord of their Heavy Play swag that's arriving. I know people, like I said last week, are getting into those sleeves, so feel free to check that stuff out. Dave, full disclosure, audience, I was on a 3-day weekend this weekend. So I was gone from Friday till late Sunday. I didn't do a lick of preparation for this episode until like an hour or 2 ago.
Leaf peeping. And you were leaf peeping.
I was peeping those leaves. As I say, Devon, in the Massachusetts, do they say leaf peeping, or is that a Colorado thing?
Before you just mentioned that, I've never heard that phrase in my entire life. I don't even know what it means.
I had not until I moved out here. Basically, in Colorado, we have a lot of evergreens. And generally the sort of the shoulder season, as they call it, is pretty brief. So going to actually see changing leaves is like an event that people do. So like late September, early October-ish, people like try to find places where they can actually go see like yellow, orange, if you're lucky, some red leaves. I didn't go specifically to peep the leaves, but we just got out of town about 3 hours away this weekend, my wife and I, and the drive was gorgeous. Lots of really nice foothills and like mountain peaks and trees all over the joint. So that was great. But anyway, I wasn't here. Dave and Devon.
You could have just came to my house and looked out my window if you wanted to see the leaves change colors. I got a bird's eye view.
I mean, that's what I miss about the Midwest a little bit. The house I grew up in, Dave and I grew up in the same town, and we had tree lawns, which were the strip between the sidewalk and the street. And they were called that because we had gigantic frickin' trees on like nearly every street. And I would look out my front window and there was one gigantic red tree and one gigantic yellow tree every fall. And I do not have that same luxury out here. Dave, what color were your trees?
Got a lot of trees out there, Devon?
A few.
In your neck of the woods?
Outside.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
Nice.
They usually fall down during the storms, but
ooh, we are not changing it. It's still 85 degrees here in Chicago, so it's summer part due right now.
But the reason I said all this is because I'm going to tell you to introduce what we're doing on this week's show.
I have no idea what we're doing on the show. It's a grab bag. It's another grab bag. I think we have a lot of little things to talk about. And so I'm going to give people the outline right now. Check the show notes if you want to know where to skip. If you do want to skip, because we're going to talk about a few different things. One is, there are RCs this weekend in Europe and Canada, and they're in Pioneer. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that, do a little brief check-in on Pioneer because we haven't for a while. And it seems fun. I know Devon is still out there brewing. I see him posting brews all the time in Pioneer. So we're going to check in on what's going on with that. And then in Modern, I thought that maybe Devon and I could just talk a little bit about what we've been up to lately. So Devon went to an RCQ with Mono Black Coffers. And then I was looking for a new deck in Modern because I'm like this now that my favorite deck is everyone's favorite deck or everyone's least favorite deck or the most popular deck. It's time for me to pull some hipster BS and move on to a different deck that's something new and still as good as its first album. So I am trying out Hardened Scales this week to see if I would like to play that.
Oh, sweet. Dave, if Hardened Scales was like a late 90s, early 2000s, we were in college when it came out, and that's the best era of the band, what would that be?
So I actually thought about this for some reason, when I was thinking about Hardened Scales. Here's what I think Hardened Scales is. I don't think it's from when we were in college. I think Hardened Scales is Battles, basically.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
It's math rock. Hardened Scales is math rock.
I love revisiting that album.
Yeah. And then finally, we do have a few new cards to talk about from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. I was kind of hopeful that they would spill a couple new cards today. They didn't, but I have 3 cards in the notes. I'm open to other people suggesting other ones to talk about, but that's what we're doing today. But first, let's do a little housekeeping.
Sweet.
We had kind of a big week in the Patreon this week, right?
I'm loving it. I'm loving all these new citizens of the Dive Down Nation. So we have Nathan R., Danny P., Steve-O B., Dylan J., Sunil S., and Prime P.
6
Thank
people.
you all. 6 new folks, 6 new citizens.
Yeah.
Love to see it.
Yeah, but we have no increased tiers.
Yep.
Yeah, no increased tiers, no any reviews, though, so it's the worst week ever.
I prefer the patrons over the review. Yeah, exactly. Take the good with the bad.
Hold on. I submitted something on Spotify. Did it not go through?
Dave handles all that.
Damn it!
Give the thought to Dave.
Did you put a note in on one of the?
Yeah. You know how it says like on Spotify when you click on the episode and it's like Q&A. What did you think about this episode? I put something in there. I wanted you to see it, but
I'm gonna log in.
We can talk about that next week.
Yeah, you dig this up while I keep going. We've got so if you want to be like all of our new citizens of the Dive Down Nation, you can go to patreon.com/thedivedown. We very much do need your ongoing support, and if you haven't yet, feel free to get your papers signed, stamp that passport, become a citizen, patreon.com/thedivedown. We are almost extremely fully caught up with all of the swag. So we are sending out stuff just from the last month or two. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Some of our international folks have been posting photos of their stuff that went all the way over to like the Netherlands. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing some photos from our folks down in New Zealand and Australia, Oceania. Is it Oceania or Oceania?
I think it's Oceania. Yeah.
There you go. If you don't want to do the ongoing Patreon thing, you can go to the store, get some swag, thedivedown.com/store. Mana Traders is one of our longest sponsor. They're not really a sponsor, longest affiliate. If you use the code TheDiveDown23, you can go to manatraders.com, get yourself a subscription to rent Magic Online cards. That gets you 10% off those first 2 months. We appreciate that. Barrister and Man, we'll talk about them later. You can use code TheDiveDown23 for 15% off your first order there. And our friends at Nerd Rage Gaming give you 8% off your order with the code DIVE8.
All right, so we do have some wonderful what did you think about this episode responses, including one from Devon. I'm going to read some of the other ones first. So these are to the George de Boer episode 241, Don't Play Control in Modern. First one said, thanks for another excellent episode. That's from William. Taylor M. put, loved this episode. I've been playing for about a year. In the last couple of months, I've been getting into Modern Competitive, and your podcast has helped a lot. I actually my first invite to an RCQ last weekend. I think that means they might have won an RCQ. So great job, Taylor M. And then Devon O's comments was beans. Just beans.
In that one,
beans.
not the beans episode.
Nailed
the
it.
George episode.
Now let's check out one of the other ones. So we actually have a lot. Here's
Dave, you got to keep up with this.
Robin Yu, this is on last week's episode 242. This episode is full of beans. RMSED8TU. That probably means something dirty that I don't understand.
Is that Morse code?
Yeah, exactly. This one says, too free for the bean. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Robin,
the classic.
Robin, if you're not first, you're last. I was high when I said that, Ricky. So we got a Talladega Nights little callback there. And then, we have people on episode 240. Wade C. Always enjoy your content and look for Modern and Pioneer. New listeners, great episodes. Love having prominent streamers and players on to talk about what they've been playing. Good thing Devon still likes us all right. And Ocean, Master of the Flow, just says, loved it. There you go. Thank you so much for interacting on Spotify. We appreciate it. It's funny. Usually we get like one comment a week, and all of a sudden in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been 2, 3, 4 comments a week. So go fill it in. Maybe we can put some custom questions in here. I can add questions as well.
Yeah, I think we should have episode based, like, what's your favorite bean?
Yeah.
What do you hate most from Modern Scam?
What have you been doing lately?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
All right. First things
what's
first.
What's on your bean grapes?
Beans.
Let's talk about a format that has less beans in it. And actually, we're not going to talk a lot about beans this week. Somewhat. It has a little less beans in it, right, Devon? But
yeah,
I'm actually going to rely on you.
The beans in this format is the appetizer.
Got it. So we're talking about Pioneer. It's time to talk about some events. As we said, it's RC season again, suddenly, surprisingly. And the RCs right now are Pioneer. We're going to take a look at a couple of different events. The first one that we're going to look at is the Legacy European Tour that is in LEC Lille. I guess that's how you say that name. It looks like a lovely town. But this event was huge. 690 players.
Wowee. It's almost like, a very small GP.
One thing really, really quickly. So you mentioned it was RC season. It's kind of RC season. So I don't know if you guys know this, but Atlanta's not for another 3 months. So these RCs are going to be so far enough apart where there's going to be another set before the RC that I play, which because I'm qualified for Atlanta. I actually just booked my flight the other day. Yeah. So it's kind of weird how far apart these RCs are.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's in Canada and the EU, but US, like you said, is in December, essentially. And then I don't know when any of the ones in APAC are happening or anything like that, but maybe it's soon.
Yeah, that reminds me, I should probably figure out if I'm going to go down and spectate in Atlanta or not. So got to figure that one out. I've got to hang out with at least one of my co-hosts in Doomwake.
Yeah, I'm thinking seriously about going to Atlanta too, for what it's worth, just to cheer Devon on as well.
I guess I'll see David there too.
Yeah. All right. Shane, do you want to take us through the meta here?
Yeah. So in Lille, as you said, Dave, 690 players. And so we'll do the usual. We've got some meta breakdowns provided from the Legacy European Tour organizers, and that's certainly helpful. It's a lot of the same. It's, 12.4% Rakdos midrange, 10% mono green devotion. 8.4% Raksack. So this is holding on as one of the, tier 1, tier 2 decks in the format, just in representation. Is It Phoenix is the one that's mildly surprising to me. It was 7% of the day one meta. I'm going to pick your brain about this a little bit in a second, Devon, because I want to know what you're thinking about Phoenix. Spirits and Humans, both at 6.4%. Azorius Control, 4.6%. Lotus Field, also 4.6%. Then we've got some interesting stuff. We've got Boros Convoke at 4%. Boros Heroic at 3.3%. So we got our two sort of aggressive Boros decks that do pretty different things. Sort of combining to about 7.3%. Greasefang at 3%, and Azorius Lotus Field at 3%. And then, all the other below that. So nothing too top heavy here, and nothing I think that's kind of too out of left field. But I think in the time that we've had between really talking critically at all about Pioneer, I think Is It Phoenix is a deck that sort of seems like it is, doing the Phoenix thing and rising from the ashes a little bit. What's going on here?
So I think
any idea?
I think at least part of the resurgence of Phoenix definitely has to do with the printing of Sleight of Hand, or I guess the reprinting of Sleight of Hand into the format, because before, there was just not as much consistency on finding those Phoenixes, and Sleight of Hand, one mana allowing you to look at 2 cards really gets you closer to find your Haymakers, find your ways to discard Phoenixes, and it gives you more 1-drops for not only Phoenixes, but also Thing in the Ices. So we kind of have really seen a big resurgence of Phoenix over the past couple of months. I'll be honest with you. I think the most surprising thing, at least as far as the metagame numbers are concerned, Greasefang, less than 3% of the meta is shocking to me. I actually thought it was going to be like the third or fourth most played deck, because it's at least been all over the place online, and I'm very surprised that less people decided to show up. I think part of that was because they expected Phoenix. The matchup's kind of tough for Greasefang.
So Greasefang's down a little bit here.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's partly due to the fact that, you know, Phoenix is increasing. The green matchup can be a little sketchy if they're on the play and they have Karn. The sacrifice matchup can be kind of tough because they have, you know, constant access to ways to enable Revolt for Fatal Push. So yeah, I think that's probably why maybe people were scared off of Greasefang. As far as the metagame as a whole, I mean, you're right. It is kind of a lot of the same decks that we've seen over, you know, the past 12, 15 months at this point. I would like to point out win rates, though. I'm looking at the melee page. These win rates look, I mean, quite frankly, like they just look atrocious. Like Rakdos mid-range 48%, 49%, excuse me. Green Devotion 48%, Sacrifice 48%, Phoenix 48%, Humans 48%, Spirits 46%, Azorius Control 41%, and then you get to Lotus Field, which is 54%. That's the best one by far.
Ding.
And then it's just like, you know, mid 40s, low 50s the entire way around. So yeah, the metagame is a little stale in terms of the decks that we've seen, but there's not really any scary win rates.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I noticed. I only had a chance to look at the day one win rates because I didn't have a chance to look at it again last night into today. But they don't change that much from day one to day two generally. But the other thing that stood out to me, other than Lotus Field, as you said, was the Boros decks are also plus 50% and had done pretty well in this tournament as well. Boros Heroic at the end of day one was 57.5% win rate. I don't know how it settled in the field, if you can still see
56.
it where you're looking right now. 56, yeah.
So
Boros Convoke was 52, and Greasefang was right around 55%. So what do you, I mean, given that these are all decks that we're familiar with in the past, you know, what do you think has kind of led to these win rates, kind of these decks being the breakout decks of the weekend?
Here's my take though. Before Devon goes, you can't grind anymore. You just got to go. You gotta convoke them. You gotta heroic them. You gotta combo them. This is what I'm talking about. This is my kind of format.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. So I think the Boros decks, as you mentioned, they kind of attack the format from two relatively different angles. So you have the convoke deck that's all about going wide, and the heroic deck that's all about going tall. And those kind of, even though they're both Boros and, you know, aggressive strategies, they really require very specific different answers to be able to attack them. So that is part of it, where I think if maybe people were prepared for Convoke and not prepared for Heroic, or vice versa. I also think that the presence, or like the Rakdos mid-range decks, like basically, like when's the last time you saw somebody cast a Liliana the Veil? And I think that has a lot to do with the Heroic win rate, because Heroic is relatively pretty good against the spot removal spells. You have God's Willings, you have Surge of Salvations, you have plenty of ways to protect. Liliana was kind of the real nail in the coffin for that matchup. So with that card being effectively gone from the format, that's, you know, means Heroic and makes Heroic good again. And I think that Convoke is just naturally good against Rakdos.
Wow.
So
I mean, some of these decks have gotten boosts as well out of WoW, though, too, right? So I saw people online talking about Boros Heroic and that, I forget the name of the card, Monstrous Rage.
Monstrous Rage. That card is busted. Oh, boy.
Told ya.
We talked about it. It looked great.
I don't even remember what deck I was playing it in a couple of weeks. Was I playing it in Prowess I think I was playing Prowess a few weeks ago, and I was like, that's a one of. That card is very good. And then Boros...
The Heroic deck's playing 4 of those.
Yes, exactly. I think it's totally worth. I mean, I could see why it would be worth it. I mean, giving a buff and trample forever is very, very useful for 1 mana at instant speed. And then Convoke is also kind of benefiting from Bunnycorn, but also bringing in Embercleave as part of the fact that Bunnycorn is in the deck as well, right?
Yeah, a lot of at least the list that I was looking at, the Convoke list that I saw, they also had Immodane's Recruiter as, now I think most of them are on like 2 Reckless Bushwhacker and 2 Recruiter, so they're not playing additional copies of Bushwhacker, but they're splitting, and it might seem pretty marginal, but Recruiter is a much better top deck because it doesn't require you to have a spell to be able to pair with it.
Ah, I see.
Recruiter's the Bushwhacker. It's just 3 mana 2/2 ETB, give everything +1/+0. 0 in haste. 3 mana 2/2 haste, everything +1/+0. And that one's a lot better than Bushwhacker when you're top decking because, again, you don't need to surge. You don't need to hold a spell in your hand. So there's a lot of these weird situations with Bushwhacker where you have to hold back an Ornithopter that you might want to use for a Gleeful Demolitioner or so on and so forth. And not having to hold back a spell makes your top decks a lot better.
Yeah, even though it's an extra mana. I mean, I imagine the trained troops occasionally comes up to the adventure side, especially if you're top decking. Maybe that helps you recover a little bit if you are wow, I have a bunch of mana and nothing else to do with it. But yeah, that's cool to see that there's a little bit of evolution going on that side too. I'm not sure if Greasefang picked anything up from WoW. Did it, Devon, do you think? Or is it just kind of what we... No, the rat we know and love?
You could just copy paste a list from 12 months ago and it'd probably be the same deck.
Sweet. Yeah. How did the top 8 turn out of this tournament? I think we probably skip over the day 2 meta shade.
Yeah, day 2 is really close to day 1. I was looking at this while you all were chit-chatting, and some of the things that I think, Rakdos Mid went up a few percentage points, Mono White Humans went up a little bit, Omnath to Light went up a decent amount, and the Convoke decks did pretty well. So,
one thing,
what you'd expect.
If we are going to hop into it for a second, Mono Green did completely crater. It had really bad conversion rate. Even though it had a 49% win rate, or 48-ish%, I think. It was 69 people day 1, or 10% of the meta, and only 10 of those people qualified for day 2 to
Not nice.
6% of the day 2 meta. Not great.
Sheesh.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
All right, so the top 8 you asked, I will provide. We had Samuel Estrati on 5-color Rona combo. This deck is new to me. This is not the Rona combo of old, but I think I get it by looking at it. But Devon, I might need your help here. What it looks like to me is you can make a lot of mana with your elves, your Kinnan, your Tyvar, etc. to speed out your Bring to Light, which can get Luca, Coppercoat Outcast, or you just cast the Luca Coppercoat Outcast. Devon is shaking his head.
Bring to Light can't get Planeswalkers, right? Creature, instant, or sorcery.
Oh, well, poop-a-doop. Well, that's not going to work. So, I guess you can hard cast the Luca, or, of course, Bring to Light can get you your singleton of the Valky, but I don't know what else you're doing with all of that Bring to Lighting. Because you can't get the Atraxa, which is what you minus Luca on. So you can, if you get Luca out, you minus him on one of your 2-mana creatures. You have no other higher mana value creatures in the deck. So I think that just automatically gets you Atraxa, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
What else am I doing here?
So this deck, it might look like, the first, when you look at the deck list, the first card listed is Luca Coppercoat Outcast. This is not a Luca Coppercoat Outcast deck. This is a Rona deck. So the combo that we are trying to set up is Rona Herald of Invasion with Retraction Helix and Mox.
So the same classic combo that we've been talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll notice there's 2 card the Great Creators in the main to go ahead and fetch another copy of Mox Amber in the sideboard. And then there's a Helix in the board, which, funny enough, you can actually go Bring to Light for granted for Helix, and Helix to set up the combo that way. So we have that combo. The Lucas are in here really just kind of as a plan B, where if you're not able to set up the Rona combo, then you can just go Luca into any one of your creatures that are 2 or more mana, and lo and behold, the only thing you can Luca into is Atraxa. So it's just 5 mana, put Atraxa onto the battlefield, help stabilize if your combo gets stopped.
Okay, so it is still the primary combo that we've messed with, we've tested, we talked about, but you do have sort of just another game plan with a Luca.
Yeah, kind of just adds another dimension to the deck. I don't think I've seen a Yorion version of this deck before. So this particular list from Samuel looks awesome. I'm probably going to have to give this a try. It looks like a really big improvement to, because I've seen 60 card Rona Luca list, but I have not seen Yorion, and it seems like, especially with Atraxa, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
the thing that mildly surprises me about this is that one of the ways that people were trying to build the Rona decks back in the early Dimir or Sultai days is you got a little bit of stack interaction or hand interaction, right? You could play Thoughtseize or Fatal Push or Counter Magic to try to protect your combo or things like that. But this looks like it's just kind of trying to do the thing where it's just hey, I'm going to present my mana elves, I'm going to present my planeswalkers and try to combo off.
Right, and the Bring to Lights, like you said, the Bring to Lights not only allow you to kind of find Valky, or there's an Unmoored Ego and a Witch's Vengeance in the main, but you can also just find more combo pieces. If you need a Rona, you can Bring to Light for that. You can get a Kinnan if you need to. Also, one other thing worth noting, Kinnan can also find the Traxa, so it's not just Luca. Kinnan can put a Traxa into play too, which is kind of sick.
Oh, sweet.
I believe Samuel was 7-0-1 or something like that after day one. Like I think what had the best record coming out of day one and went on to top 8 after that.
Yeah, first in the Swiss. Second place, we have Josep Saint-Filiu on Gruel Vehicles. The only thing I really see here that's new is to me is a playset of the Huntsman's Redemption, which is from Wilds. Is it from WoW? Yeah, it's from WoW. And it's a 2 green saga, and it reads Chapter 1, create a 3/3 green beast creature token. Shane, that sounds bad, but wait, there's more. Chapter 2, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature or basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Chapter 3, up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. So this is a cool sort of enabler and finisher.
I mean, Devon just gave a huge thumbs up on camera to this card, like forced perspective all the way in front of the lens. So you like this card, Devon?
Card's great.
Yeah,
absolutely love this card. I think it was like the week after the set came out, I played a challenge with Gruel Vehicles with 4 of this card, and every single time I drew it, it was so good. It just like works so well with the Lovestruck Beast tokens, because you can go like Lovestruck Beast, make a token, play this, you get a 3/3, then you can use that 1/1 that you got from Lovestruck to go find a Thrill Seeker or a Storm Seeker or anything like that. And then also Chapter 3, giving 2 things +2/+2 trample. There's also some really cool things you can do where the way that Fable or Sagas work is they trigger in main phase 1. So in your draw phase, what you can do is you draw for your turn, and then you can crew the vehicle in your draw phase, or I guess upkeep. And then once you get to your main phase, those creatures are in play, so they will see the Chapter 3 of the saga. So you can even like pump up your Chariot or your Sky Sovereign to help sizing. Yeah, absolutely love this card. Also, one more thing with a Crone War. If you go a Crone War, steal your thing, and time it right with the redemption, you can sacrifice their thing to the Chapter 2 of Huntsman's Redemption.
Yeah. Love that.
To see it.
Love that rack sack move. Yeah. I saw somebody on Twitter call this the green fable of the Mirror Breaker. What do you think? Is that too hyperbolic, Devon, or you think it's in the same ish bracket, or what do you think? 80% of a saga or of a fable? What do you think?
Give me like 70.
70?
It's close.
Okay.
Like it's basically it's as good as green is gonna get, as close as green is gonna get to Fable. It's really good.
Well, I hope that nobody gets as close to Fable as Fable kind of ever again.
Yeah, that's true.
But okay, 70%, I'll take it.
All right, third place and fourth place. Sam Rolfe on Lotus Field, Adrian Inigo Totsitz on Lotus Field as well. Fifth place, Marcin Kimusko on Enigmatic Fires. Sixth place, All Sec. They go with like their streamer name on Rakdos Mid. Seventh place, Lars Heinrichvark on Greasefang. And eighth place, Christopher Larson on Racksack. So 7 different decks in this top 8. Cannot complain about that, at least. And I mean, these are all, I guess what's the one thing we don't have? Okay, yeah, we have Rakdos Mid, we have Rakdos Sack, we've got Lotus Field, we've got aggressive decks, we've got a weird combo deck. Yeah, seems like a perfectly good top 8 to me.
The winner was Lotus Field, correct?
Yeah, Adrian Inigo Totsitz wins over Greasefang in the hands of Lars Heinrichvark. So sweet. Congratulations. That's a big tournament to win. A lot of people.
Lotus Field was kind of the emerging talk of this tournament over the second day 2, I would say, basically, and even part of day 1. There were a lot of people on Twitter popping up to be like, Lotus Field's back. There's a lot of Lotus Field's winning. Like, I know that it had a 54% win rate, Devon, that you said aggregate, but it was definitely one of the things that people were talking about the most as the tournament progressed.
Yeah, and honestly, 54% might not sound that high, but when you compare it to the rest of the win rates, it was probably the second or third highest.
Just crushing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think part of that is we talked about how there was a big kind of talk. The talk of the town was like this Phoenix deck coming in. There was Phoenix was everywhere on Magic Online, and I think a lot of people were preparing for Phoenix, and Lotus Field preys on Phoenix. Like, that matchup is close to unwinnable for the Phoenix side of things. So, if a lot of people are picking up Phoenix, it does make a lot of sense for the Lotus Field list. One thing that I will mention about the list in particular, there's 3 discontinuities, which is a card that we have not seen in the combo version before, more in the control version. So maybe that picks up and people continue to play that, but it's a cool tech.
Do people remember what discontinuity does? I'm going to read it real quick.
I know it ends the turn if it's your turn for cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 mana, end the turn. That's it. Yeah. So it removes the Lotus Field sack trigger from the stack.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, 2 lands.
Seems like an expensive
Devon,
way
by
to
the
do
way.
that.
Yeah, for what it's worth. Like it costs. Oh no, it costs 2 less. Yeah, so it is 2 mana on your turn if you cast it. Yeah, that's cool.
I also did briefly write up the Face2Face Championship in Calgary. That had 177 players, yet somehow went 13 rounds. That seems cruel, honestly. And the metagame there, not drastically different. It's like 12% Mono Green Devotion, 10.7 Rack Sack, only 9% Rack Mid, 8% Phoenix, 6.8 Heroic, so it's more heroic, 6.8 Mono White Humans, 5.65 Greasefang, so there's a slightly more Greasefang folks for you, Devon. And then, of course, like the usual, like 5% Spirits, 3.4% Lotus Field, and 3.4% Convoke.
However, the win rate's very different in this tournament.
Yeah, they are. They're definitely different. Like, Rack Sack
They're not as flat.
Yeah, not as flat. What are our standouts here? Rack Sack was like 55.8, and Is It Phoenix was 59%.
Approaching 60, yeah.
Yeah, wowee.
And then
I think part of that
Spirits.
is because there's a lot less Lotus Field combo. Like there was only 6 people playing Lotus Field combo.
Yeah.
And as we just mentioned, if that matchup is pretty bad for Phoenix and there's less people playing Lotus, then kind of makes sense that the Phoenix win rate increases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Spirits increases as well because Spirits is pretty good against Phoenix, right?
I actually don't know. I've never actually played that matchup.
Okay.
I would assume it's pretty close.
I've heard it's pretty good. I've always been like, why is it good? But I think I've heard that too. So the top 8 here: Liam Kane on Racksack, Boston Shatterman on Phoenix, Derek Pite, aka Misplaced Ginger, on guess what? Rakdos Mid, Drew Christensen on Boros Heroic, Altifer on Gruul Vehicles, Gavi Bennett on Azorius Control, Andrew Kidston on Mono Green Devotion, and David Schneier on Enigmatic Fires. And guess what won? Phoenix.
If I count, that's 8 different decks there too. This is more than 7. That's 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Boston Shadowman takes it down with Phoenix?
Yep, that's the story.
Sweet. All right. So one thing that I did find interesting, and it kind of gets back to us talking about how even stuff was seeming by and large, mtgdex.net, great site, thank you for existing. They did a sort of a event combination of everything that happened at Lille. So they had like a classic qualifier with 236 players. They had the championship with 690 players, and then they had a last chance qualifier with 297 players. And so that's like a bunch of matches. Wow. And from
Magic's
these three
back, baby, in Lille.
Magic
is back.
But what's funny is like from these 3 events, things are looking pretty darn flat. Like the only things that are really kind of out of like the 47 to low 50s% is like Lotus Field at 56% with 423 matches, Boros Heroic at 55% across 393, and Boros Convoke at 55% as well across 351. And the only thing that's really falling behind is Azorius Lotus Field at about 45% across 252 matches.
Yeah. If you go down to Rona has 59% win rate with 120 matches for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's a decent
smaller sample size, but reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like how it looks, right? There's just so many decks between like 47, 51, 52. And you can, I guess you can play whatever you want, or you can try to play the decks that are spiking right now. I don't know. What do you think in this win rate matrix, Doom?
There's a lot of yellow on this chart, and I can't
So
help
much
but
yellow.
I don't usually like to bring up the play draw thing in Pioneer because I know it's kind of a topic that a lot of people have kind of overblown and stuff. But I mean, when you look at it like this, if what appears to be every single deck is winning half of its matches, I mean. That's as close to a coin flip as you can get, right? Like,
yeah,
it's true.
It's weird.
Yeah. You're still playing a good amount of Pioneer, right? I know you've broadened out to Modern a good amount lately, but I have seen you brewing in Pioneer still. Are you in there every day, you think? Or are you in there a few times a week? Or where are you at right now?
Definitely not every day. It's like, I'd be lucky if I spend 1 day a week on Pioneer at this point.
What
I'm
happened?
basically like back all in on Modern. I don't know. I enjoy the Modern format a lot more than I enjoy the Pioneer format.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. I mean, I think a lot of it is if you look at all of these decks. Is it us,
Devon? Did we influence you to get back into Modern a little bit?
Maybe.
Start coming on the show with us.
I don't want to tell the listeners at home that they're forcing me to say that I like Modern. But anyways, I think a lot of it has to do with, if you look at the decks that people played in these two events, it's a lot of the same stuff that we've seen for 6, 7, 8, 9 months right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think, that's not to say that the format is not balanced. It's basically as balanced as you possibly could be. Everything is winning half of its matches. There's nothing that is, in terms of metagame share, nothing above 12%. So in terms of the numbers, the metagame seems relatively healthy. But it's just that it's really hard to explain, other than I really just don't enjoy the play patterns as much as I used to.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably some novelty in there. I mean, not to get deep into what Devon needs to reconnect with Pioneer, but you did play Pioneer pretty much exclusively for a good amount of time. I mean, that was about a year, right, of just grinding Pioneer probably when you started your stream. And so I could see just being burn out on it a little bit. There hasn't been a massive shake up to Pioneer in a while. And so, the meta hasn't been completely reconfigured. I mean, in a way, if you look at this stuff, the last major shakeup I feel like that happened to Pioneer was when Rakdos midrange got good back 2 years ago, almost, right? It's probably been that long since that deck got kind of burst on the scene. Really, is it more like 18 months?
Well, okay. What I was thinking was the printing of Shieldred. I think that's kind of where it all turned around. So the Rakdos midrange deck was fine before Shieldred, but it didn't really have that top end close threat. And Shieldred is just the most broken finisher in the entire form. I'm not saying that Shieldred is a broken card, but in context of Pioneer, at the top of your curve where it's a bunch of Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, cheap interaction, it's just the best possible thing you could top your curve with.
Yeah.
So
there's that. Yeah. And who knows, as you need to get ready, because Atlanta is Pioneer, right? So you're going to have to turn some amount of attention back to it. Then I imagine we will too, as we get closer. So this is kind of a nice little appetizer as we begin to start thinking about having to think about Pioneer again, because I would love to play some last chance qualifiers or stuff like that when I'm down for Atlanta as well. So
what I'll probably do is I'll probably start my really, really dedicated testing, maybe a month and a half out. So probably maybe in about a month or so, that's when I'll really start to move back in on Pioneer.
Yep. All right,
Dave, you want let's get out of here.
Yep.
Let's get into that little ad break, and then we'll come back to start talking again, where I will likely be very quiet unless I can find clever little interjections to talk to when you and Devon start talking about some decks you've been playing. So stay with us. David, you know what I'm holding?
It sounds like something in paper or plastic.
It's actually in plastic, but I finally have hollows in my hands, hollow ends, and
guess what? I got it too.
Oh, my man!
Live reacts.
We have the hollows. If you're not familiar with what hollows is Barrister and Mann's big fall fragrance that's in all sorts of stuff. The shaving soap, the fragrance, the aftershave balm, the splash, the body soap, all that good stuff. I have the shaving soap. What do you have?
I have a sample of the shaving soap as well.
Sweet.
And let me tell you, it smells like autumn. It smells like autumn in here.
Live on mic.
Okay.
Ooh. Hold on. So I like this because when I honestly did save this for the episode, because I opened the box and I kind of smelled it through the plastic a little bit, opened it up, closed it right away, and I was like, this is kind of like a pumpkin spice. And now that I have it,
it's not
like a pumpkin spice at all. It's it has a lot of freshness.
You know what it reminds me of? I know it's supposed to be maybe a little spooky because it's called Hollows and it's got some of that spooky art direction to go with it. Got your gothic, your kind of modern gothic kind of typeface going on for Hollows on the website. Go check it out. Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of walking down the streets and there's leaves have fallen and you're getting that kind of nice autumnal scent in the air. And you're remembering when you were a kid and thinking about Calvin and Hobbes.
I'm always thinking about Calvin and Hobbes.
Exactly. And the scenes where Calvin is walking through the woods with Hobbes sharing a moment That's what Hallows reminds me of. A little more positive spin. It can also be spooky too if you want.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I get the black pepper, I get the cocoa, but I definitely get like the vetiver on top that keeps it from being kind of like a one note, hey, this is, pumpkin spice latte or leaves in the fall type thing. And
yeah,
I'm all about it. I'm looking forward to, I'm going to use this tomorrow. So Dave, what's your shaving schedule? Mine is Sunday and Thursday. I shave twice a week.
So as you all know, I don't actually shave. I use the beard oils. So I don't actually ever get to use the shaving soaps in particular, but I do use the regular soaps and the hand soaps and the beard oil and occasionally the aftershave splash, even though there is no aftershave moment for me. My entire life is pre-shave.
Awesome. Well, if you want to be like Dave, and I guess and like me, pick up any one of these products, whether it's going to be Hollows or any other of the amazing scents of Barrister and Man, you can go to Barrister and Man, MANN.com. You can use our code, the Dive Down 23, for 15% off of your first order there. Helps Will know that you came from the Dive Down, keeps our relationship with him going, and we appreciate that. All right, we're back. And as we said, I did not play Magic last week. I didn't play a single game. I didn't play any card games at all last week. So forgive me. You know what? You and I am playing. I'm just gonna throw this out there. Lies of P.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lies of P. If you're a Souls weirdo, if you like those Souls games, you like this weird Pinocchio game. I promise you.
Yeah, I've been admittedly been playing Baldur's Gate some as well.
Yes.
But,
Yes. Dave, you'll beat it in like 3 years. I believe in you.
Yeah, that's how long it takes me to play games these days. I mean, it took me 7 years to beat Breath of the Wild, so,
Hey, like we said before the episode, you eat the elephant one bite at a time.
That's right.
But speaking of elephants, we have Devon's elephant mana-ish. Well, this is a bad metaphor, but I'm going to keep rolling with it. So the elephant in the room.
It's like, what are you doing?
The elephant in the room is coffers, Devon. You're still playing coffers. Okay. You played an RCQ. Yep. What happened?
Well, RCQ we capped at 48 players.
Nice.
And it was 6 rounds of Swiss. I ended up going 4-0-2 in the Swiss, and I was unfortunately dispatched in the quarterfinals. Yeah, it was, I basically played the same list that I played. I actually didn't change a single card from the super qualifier. So that was the one that had 2 talismans and 2 Beseech the Mirrors. Still a big fan of that list. The only thing I think I might consider changing is going back to a second Cling to Dust over the second Beseech the Mirror, because drawing the second Beseech can be kind of awkward sometimes. You don't always have a thing to sacrifice to it. And Cling's weird. It's like a good game 1 card, but not as good post board, because you do bring in Leyline in a lot of matchups. And, I usually cut Cling when I bring in Leyline, because they're going to have less cards in the graveyard, and they're not going to have as much food for your Clings. So, but as far as the actual tournament itself, round 1 played against Scam. Nothing too noteworthy here. Match went relatively long, but yeah, it was mostly just like I got Scam game 1 and then drew Leylines in the post-board games. The thing about that matchup is as long as you can turn off their Scam, like your late game usually will overpower theirs. So, as long as you're not dying early, then it should be good to go towards the late game. Round 2 had a really, really fun match. So I played against the guy who goes to our LGS name. His name is John, and he was playing a Coffers, a variant of sorts, but he was playing some blue cards. Have you guys seen this deck list?
I is put this a link the one to you played today? Did you tweet about it today?
I did.
I was curious about this. I didn't realize it was in our notes as well.
I just put it there.
Let's hear about it, because this is some wild stuff. Demir,
is this the
Coffers.
blue Karn, the blue Tron to the black Tron of Coffers?
Well, it's funny you bring up blue Tron. I don't know if listeners maybe have heard the username Trellin before, but Trellin is a very avid blue Tron enthusiast. So now that they've kind of made the switch to Coffers, they got to bring that blue Tron flair into the Coffers deck,
Yeah. If you look at the history, it looks like for the past month and a half, Trellin has only been doing tons of Dimir Coffers. I see stuff from
League,
That's a good point.
Challenge,
from
League.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like I'm going to test this out. I'm going to 5-0 some leagues. I'm going to do pretty decent. I'm going to top 32 some challenges, and now I'm going to top 4 one. So getting better.
Yeah, I think, okay, looking at their history, they played a little bit. Yeah, it was like a lot of Mono Bluetron, and then they kind of switched to Coffers. So they played a bunch of Coffers. Now it looks like this is their new take on Coffers. But basically what's going on here is it's a lot of the coffer stuff that you're used to, so Karns, Bowmasters, Rings, but instead of it's cutting down some of the 4-drops, excuse me. So you'll see no Shieldrids, which I find kind of interesting, and no copies of Beseech the Mirror, no Damnation. So it's cutting all of those 4-drops, and it's cutting some of the removal spells. It's also not playing Thoughtseize, which I think is a little crazy, but 4 Cling to Dust, 2, and then the blue cards we're playing are 2 Repeal, 2 Remand, and 4 Spell Pierce, which I kind of oddly like in a sense, because I think it makes you a little bit better against Cascade, and I think Cascade can be kind of a tougher matchup from the Coffer side of things. So Spell Pierce, like, I'd much rather have Spell Pierce against Living End than Thoughtseize.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of the blue cards, and then it also gives you some flexibility.
Yeah, and some weird things that they're doing. So number one, what repeal? What is repeal helping us with really here?
So at least when I was playing I played this deck a little bit on stream today, and one thing that it really came up with was against Blood Moon. So where you could go, like, you could have, because you have a couple of basic islands to be able to fetch for with Expedition Map, and what you can do is you can set up a spot where you have a bunch of like coffers in play, and you just go end of turn, repeal your Blood Moon, and then untap, and you just have access to 20 mana to do whatever. And then you don't even care if they replay the Blood Moon, because you got one, all you need is that one turn. And I think the most appealing thing to me, which came up a couple of times, was the blue gives you access to Academy Ruins in your mana base, which you can then play Mindslaver in your sideboard. And who doesn't love
Mindslaver locking people? Is that what we're doing?
No, you monster.
Oh, I did that at least 3 times today.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I think the way, and the more I play this deck out, the way that Trellin has built this deck has basically with the goal of that being your primary win condition, which hilarious. I find awesome. I think that's hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah, they came up a lot.
You prevailed in this match in your RCQ, though. It looks like, yeah, you did. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, so there was some weird stuff. My opponent at one point he tails ended my Field of Ruin. I went to go field his coffers, and I didn't know what his deck list was at the time, and I was like, "What could he have here?" And then he tails ended my Field of Ruin. I was like,
"Oh my gosh!"
But yeah, I was able to take the match. It was definitely a crazy match. So now I'm 2-0. Round 3, probably my favorite match of the day here. Round 3, I played against Scam. So most of the games were kind of the same as your typical fare against Scam, getting scammed and not getting scammed Leyland in the post-board games. But game 1 was really, really sick. So my opponent was in the play, kept 7. And I can't remember if I think I kept 7 because, yeah, I kept 7. So we both keep 7. He goes land and then pitches, I think he pitched a Bowmaster to a Grief. So land, pitch, Grief. And then he's looking at my hand, which contains a Field of Ruin, a Swamp, a Cabal Coffers, a Fatal Push, a Shieldred's Edict, a Karn the Great Creator, and the One Ring. So he thinks for a little bit, takes the Edict, and to my surprise, does not cast Not Dead After All on his Grief. Lets his Grief die. And then from there, he goes pitch a red card, Fury, and then Not Dead After All the Fury. Because he knows that my hand, like the Fury is a 3-turn clock, he knows that my hand only has 3 lands. I have a Fatal Push, which doesn't touch Fury, and I have 2 4-drops. So the Fury's likely going to kill me before I even get to my 4th land drop. So, and he's in the play, so I don't even get a shot at ripping Damnation or whatever. So I think I drew a Swamp, and I just play a land and pass. He goes attack for 8, doesn't play a second land, pass. He has 2 cards in hand. I draw Talisman. So this is step number 1. So I draw the Talisman. I play a land and I play a Talisman. He goes untap, attack me for 8, put me to 4. And then he goes land, he draws land for turn and plays Dothy Voidwalker. So now I'm at 4, facing down a 4/4 Fury and a 3/2 Dothy Voidwalker.
Yeah.
And, boys, there's only one copy of Damnation in my deck. And I think you know where this is going.
Yeah.
So I do draw the damnation, play land, play damnation. 4 life is a little sketchy, but he has no cards in hand. I think he had 1 card in hand, and I just very easily take over the game. But that sequence of needing to draw the talisman, which is a 2 of, and the damnation, which is a 1 of, which was like I gotta be like a less than 2% chance.
Dave, get the calculator out.
Oh yeah, I don't even want to think about the odds of that. But like, were you sitting there at the time going like, "This is my only out"? Like, did you know what your only out was, or because when I'm in those moments, a lot of times I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna play it out," and then I'm like, "Oh wait." And then I'm like, oh, wait, were you sitting there thinking, boy, the only way I do this is if I draw Talisman right now and then Damnation right after? Or what do you think?
I had a second copy of Shieldred's Edict, which was only a 1 of. But I was like, if I draw that, then I'm fine.
Right.
But once I drew the Talisman, I was like, oh, I could just draw Damnation at this point. I didn't think it was going to happen, but and then he tapped because I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to rip the Damnation, and he's just going to leave up mana and have not that after all. But then he tapped out for Voidwalker, and I was like, oh,
perfect. You're like, perfect.
Oh, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, just like it was crazy sequence.
Yeah.
So that was round number 3. That was quite the adrenaline rush, as it were.
Oh, absolutely. How was it? Was their reaction okay? Were they like cool, or did they need a minute?
They were, a little bit upset, but it's magic at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you get sacked.
I mean, what do you, sometimes somebody draws a 3%er against you. It is what it is. Like, yeah.
Right. Yeah. What can you do? And then round 4 played against Amulet, which I think I've played it a couple of times, and I feel like it is a bad matchup for Coffers, which is, you wouldn't think so because you have a lot of Field of Ruins, but if they start on Amulet and you can't keep that, like if you can't Thoughtseize their Amulet, right, or if they lead on Saga, which gets them to Amulet with basically being Thoughtseize proof, then they can be a little bit too fast before you can start Field of Ruining.
Sure.
But the way that I look at that matchup is like, if you can Karn Stonebrain and resolve Stonebrain, you win the game. Like if you Stonebrain their Titans, they basically have no outs.
Got it.
Which happened a couple of times. There was a really cool line in game 3 though, where my opponent, so they had a Dryad and an Amulet in play, and they had 2 bounce lands, right? And I know they had a bounce land in hand because they had picked it up the previous turn after playing Dryad. I play a Coffers as my land for turn, and I can only get 7 mana with a Karn, which the magic number for Karn is 8 for Karn Stonebrain activate.
Right.
So I'm like, well, I can't get Coffers. So what I did is I play the Karn, and I Karn uptick on his Amulet, and then use the Fatal Push in my hand to kill the Amulet.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because if I don't kill the Amulet, I can't get Revolt to kill the Dryad. Therefore, he just goes play the bounce land that I know is in his hand, has 6 mana, probably has Titan.
Right.
So I'm like, the only way I can keep him... Right, yeah. And I'm like, the only way I can keep him off 6 is if I push the Amulet, just hope that he doesn't have 2 untapped lands, pass the turn, and then if he just passes back to me, I untap, get Stonebrain, game's over. And that's exactly what happened. I killed his Amulet. He didn't have 2 untapped lands. Untap, get Stonebrain, easy peasy.
That's sick.
That's very cool.
I always forget about that move with Karn. Yeah.
Yeah, I just was hearing, I forget where I was hearing someone talk about that, and I was like, man, I don't think about all my lines when I play these decks. Like I'm always thinking about what can I do with Karn on my stuff, and do I have the liquid metal coating to like get their lands? But I'm never just like, what can I do to eliminate like value pieces they have on their side of the board with like my removal or something like that.
Magic card's got a lot of text on them.
So much text.
Too much, especially Questing Beast.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So you ID into the top 8. And then
lost 2 rounds ID.
And then kind of, top 8, I'll let you talk about it, but it was against Yawgmoth.
It was. Yeah. So top 8 against Yawgmoth. Somehow I ended up 5th, which I thought was... I think I ended up 5th because 2 people had to play it out. Therefore, they both jumped me in breakers. Because you would think 402 would have really, would be towards the top of the standings. But I caught I think the other 402 was 4th and I was 5th. So just kind of like if we had reverse breakers, then could have been a different story.
Right.
So I was in the draw against Yawgmoth. And I wanted to ask you guys about this because there was a situation that came up and I wanted to hear your guys' opinion and maybe even listeners at home if you want to, let us know in the comments or write a review or put it in a review. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on this. So opponent mulligans to 6. And I can't remember what hand. So my hand's here. Okay. So they mulled to 6. They're on the play. They lead with Boseiju into Gilded Goose. I draw for my turn, and I go swamp Thoughtseize. The rest of my hand, after casting the Thoughtseize, is 2 lands. I believe it was a Coffers and a Field of Ruin. Or, no, it was an Urborg and a Field of Ruin. So 2 lands, 2 Bowmasters, a Thoughtseize, a Karn, and a Ring. So I have 2 Bowmasters and a second Thoughtseize. Those are the important parts. My opponent's 4-card hand, because they mulliganed to 6, has a Wall of Roots, a Grist, a Bowmasters, and a Cord. And remember, they only have 1 land. They don't have a second land.
Right.
They have a land and a Gilded Goose. So my thought process, which at the time may or may not have been correct, but I was thinking that because my opponent didn't have a land and I can't push the Wall of Roots, I can just take the Wall of Roots, hope they don't have a land on top, and then take Grist next turn, which is, somewhat reasonable logic. I'm curious to see, before I read the rest of this, what would you guys take off that Thoughtseize?
How good is the Grist against you, do you think? It seems like fine.
Is it better than fine?
Well, Grist is like the best card in the Yawgmoth deck. The thing about Grist is it also turns on all of their good cards. Like it makes Cord a good top deck, it makes Yawgmoth a good top deck. It just basically like turns on all of their good cards.
Yeah.
And I only have 2 Edicts, 2 Shield's Edict to kill it, which is my main out, but I don't have that card in my hand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the logic of trying to constrain their mana with Thoughtseize and then saving the other Thoughtseize for the next turn when you can, come back with that. I'm sensing that you're not happy with that particular line.
No.
Because that's what you did, right?
Right. I took the Wall of Roots because I kind of got caught up in the moment. I'm like, oh man, what if I just get him? What if he doesn't draw any lands?
Right.
But I think that's just really bad logic, because imagine this scenario. Imagine I take the Grist and my opponent doesn't draw a land, right? So I take the Grist and they don't draw a land.
Right.
I'm winning that game anyways. Regardless of what happens, if my opponent doesn't draw a land, I'm winning the game no matter what.
Right. I see.
And because of that, the only way I lose this game is if I leave them with Grist and they draw a land.
Right.
And I think I kind of didn't think through that enough. I'm like, like I said, just thought in the heat of the moment, I was like, well, they don't have a land, just take the Wall of Roots. And I didn't have a Fatal Push. But there's like kind of different layers to that thinking. And, I pulled my Twitch chat a little bit, and I think a lot of them also said to take the Wall of Roots. But looking back on it, I think that's just kind of flawed logic, because regardless of what happens, if they don't draw a land, I'm winning that game either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only question is then, like, if you, like, the third bucket of things is sort of like the unknown unknowns. It's like, okay,
yeah.
So Grist is just their best card. But if you take Grist, how else do you lose? Right, from the position that you're in right there. I mean, is there another top deck they can make that they can, like, if they top deck Yawgmoth, does that suddenly make them way ahead? I guess it doesn't from their current board state. If they top deck something else, does that pull them way ahead? You know what I mean? If it really comes down to Grist and you really step back and go, look, they have Grist, I just got to get rid of it. It's their best card, doesn't matter what else they get. Then, like, yeah, I totally see what you mean for sure. But they're also 1 in 3 likely to draw land. Right, and they're
that's also true.
They're also really likely to get another ramp creature in a lot of those scenarios as well, which would end up with them playing Grist 1 turn later, which I guess you would have taken with Thoughtseize anyway, so maybe that doesn't matter. So
yeah, because I had the second Thoughtseize.
Yeah. This always goes back to what does Reed Duke say? Punch a hole in their hand, right? And I feel like your challenge here is what's the best hole, because there's 2. Right? There's the hole of the mana, and then there's the Grist, right? What's the best card in the hand? What enables them to keep developing their board and turn Cord online and all that kind of good stuff. So I think I understand the challenge here for sure. And I think, we do get caught up in that kind of stuff, right? Which is like, how do we stop our opponent's mana development without kind of necessarily thinking like, well, what's the actual sequence of plays that's coming up? And what am I doing in response to them having mana or not having mana? Like, does it even matter if they're continuing to get their mana online when I took the Grist out of their hand and they don't have a ton of amazing things to do afterwards? So yeah, it's a challenge for sure. And I definitely have taken the wrong thing because I maybe don't think hard enough, or I'm like, I take my first option because it just seems like the best one, especially when it comes to stifling someone's mana. It gets so juicy in your mind, but it doesn't necessarily always turn out that way.
Right. Yeah. So that was a tough game to lose because, I think as soon as the game was over, I looked at my opponent. I'm like, I probably would have won that game if I had just taken the grist, because like the grist just made like 10 tokens or whatever.
Oh, jeez. It got really out of hand.
That was game one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I could never kill it. So, and then game two, very, very unfortunate ending to the day. I mulled to 6. I kept on the play 2 lands. I think it was Swamp Urborg. Leyline, push, Bowmaster Karn. Can't really ask for more on 6. You have opening hand Leyline, a Fatal Push for their 1-drop, a Bowmaster for their Bowmaster, and a payoff. The game went to turn 10, and I never drew a third land.
Oh.
So, yeah. Kind of tough way to go out.
That's rough.
But yeah, I mean, that game one was ultimately one that if I could just take that one back, it's always, unfortunately you can't take them back, but the one thing to note is just like, at least for the listeners at home, when you have kind of that loss and maybe just a little reflection, always think about, go back and visualize what could you have done differently. And I think that's one thing that really helped me level up is like situations like this. Now if I'm put in that exact same situation at the next RCQ, I'm going to know to take the grist.
Yeah.
And it's always a learning experience. But yeah, as far as coffers in general, deck's great. I think the only bad matchups are the really heavy control decks like 4-color with Counterspell, and Living End has oddly been kind of tough. But past that, I think this deck is really good against Scam. My win rate against Scam has been crazy.
Nice. That's awesome to hear, actually, given how much people are starting to make noise about Scam.
Yeah.
We can talk about that another time. Maybe let's see how things continue to develop. But, like I said, I didn't want to play. I mean, I do like playing Scam. Like I said, it's my favorite deck. But even this week, I didn't really want to play Scam right now. So I get it.
What did you play, Dave?
So like I said at the beginning, I was looking for the hipster choice right now, and maybe not the super obscure one, but I was like, what's the deck that's kind of overlooked, vaguely overlooked in the top tiers? And I was just kind of looking around on Thursday night, and I was kind of like, you know what I haven't tried in a really long time? Hardened Scales. And then I also noticed that sometime over the weekend, I saw that Andrea Mangucci also tweeted out his tiers for Modern, which he also says that Modern is a tier 0 or A tier format. Like there's only one deck in the A tier, and that is Scam. But he has 6 decks in the B tier, and that includes 4-color Omnath, Rhinos, Living End, Murktide, Amulet Titan, and Scales. And so I was kind of like, well, let's give it a try. I mean, the other thing is I wanted to play a new card. I hadn't played too many, I hadn't spent too many times playing WoW cards, and this deck has Agatha's Soul Cauldron in it. And I was like, well, I don't really want to play Yawgmoth. So let's try Hardened Scales and see how well that works.
Cauldron's broken.
I mean, there are some things to say about that card for sure. Another thing I was thinking about too was just I kind of wanted to play a deck that was a little more assertive, just because it kind of where my mind was over a little tired watching my kids by myself for 5 days this weekend, and so I was just kind of like, I need something with a little bit lower brain, not lower brain power, but maybe the ability to just be aggressive-ish or assertive, I suppose. If you look at that list of decks, Hardened Scales is kind of the only one that's kind of assertive up there.
I was going to say lower brain power. I can't. Yeah, right. I've tried playing Scales myself, and it's like you need to get there. It's like a linear math equation or something. Yeah. I don't even know. There's like you need a degree in algebra to play.
Yes.
I can't play.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to course correct on that phrase, because I do think. I mean, the nice thing about it is there are plenty of win patterns where you're just going to turn a creature sideways and hit them with something really big. But to really reveal like the rest of the deck, I learned really quickly like you have to be thinking about what happens when you have a Scales out and an Ozolith and Zabaz, and you're going to move counters around. You're going to put a bunch of counters onto your Arcbound Ravager and then sack your Arcbound Ravager and put a bunch of counters to somebody else. And so things get really wild all over the place. And actually, one of the games that broke my heart the most, I'll talk about a little later, was me messing up Scales math for I think messing up Scales math. I'm not even sure if I messed up the Scales math, honestly, but we can talk about that a little later. We can exchange bad beat stories. But it did feel like this one is just doing something a little bit different than a bunch of the other decks in that kind of top tier. And so I was pretty into it. I didn't do super great with the deck, I think I jumped immediately into a league because that's what I always do. So I'm not practicing or anything. I'm just playing. I only went 2-3 with it, but I think I should have gone 3-2.
I mean, I feel like going in with scales completely unprepared and doing 2.5 out of 5 seems pretty good to me.
Not only that, but the 2 decks that I beat were Scam and Murktide. So I beat Scam and Murktide. I lost to Zoo Scam, which I don't know what that deck's. I mean, I do know what that deck's all about. I've been watching it on Twitter, but wow, okay. And then I also lost to a Asmo, black and white Asmo deck that just crushed me by making a bunch of food and then using Asmo to kill all of my creatures basically before I can make them 6/6s, which was a lot of fun. But the matches against Scam and Murktide were both really interesting and interactive. Burn, like I said, I think I lost to one bad sequencing decision, but that's all about like having Shadow Spear main, and so being able to Saga into Shadow Spear after a certain amount of time and attack with an 8/8 Saga token, with Shadow Spear attached to it, of course, is a huge play against aggressive decks, and it works against Burn as long as they don't have Wear Tear, which is what happened one time. But the other two I felt like were kind of medium decks. So I all of this being said, I don't have like a bunch of hot tips for how to play Scales off the top. But I did have some
after 5 matches, you don't?
After 5 matches, yeah, exactly. But I do have
Dave's still learning himself.
Yeah. Exactly. Learning plenty myself. I will say, just to spoil it, I do think I would play this deck again. Like I have it rented still. I think I would fire up another league with it. I thought it was fun and interesting at least. And the cards felt powerful enough. The one problem with this deck, I'll go through it. So I kind of have like a list of things that I thought were cool and good about the deck right now, and a list of things that I thought were kind of not very good or things that I thought are problems. And I'll be curious to know what your all impressions of these particular things are from here. So here's the stuff that I thought was good. Here's what stood out to me. Number one, actually, which I thought was kind of weird, is a little uncommon that people have talked about on and off for the last year, and that is Patchwork Automaton, which is a 1/1 for 2 with Ward 2 that says whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Patchwork Automaton. I knew this card was powerful and good. I hadn't played with it before. I still think it's probably kind of underrated in the deck. This card is pretty hard to interact with for a lot of decks just because of the Ward 2 and just because you can move so fast.
This card's
sometimes
sweet.
it gets out of line.
I played this in something like months ago. I can't remember what the heck it was, but it's sweet when you have like this artifact synergy. Like this thing gets big fast.
Yeah, it gets big really fast. And I was even doing wild stuff like, because I was against a red deck in game 1, I was against Burn in game 1, I just like tossed a Hangerback Walker for no mana against it to get it to 4/4 when they were tapped out so that they couldn't kill it with a lightning bolt, basically. So they were on 2 mana. I was on 2 mana. I managed to grow it up to 4 mana on that turn, or to 4 toughness, knowing that they couldn't kill it with multiple spells. And then I managed to make it an 8/8 and then swing it with Shadow Spear from there. And that was just kind of like the game. Ward 2. Ward is more impressive to me. I guess I only want to mention this because Ward is becoming more and more impressive to me the more cards that it gets tacked on for good rate that I see. There's not a ton of them, but when it's on a card for basically free, it can help you. It can make the card viable when maybe it wouldn't be viable without it.
Yeah, I mean this turns like a pretty unplayable card, as a 1/1 for 2 that you have to untap with and do anything to get some value out of it. It makes it playable. And it's wild to me that it took that long to create Ward, because it sort of seems like it's so tunable. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like hexproof, and it's like they can give something like Ward 1, they get something like Ward 4. It's really something that they can really dial in the sort of the mana value that you get for a card that can like turn like a 1.6 into a 2.2, and that makes a card better than it costs sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right, next thing that stuck out to me is really good, of course, or is really impressive in this deck is all of my Ozoliths. The Ozolith.
Which one?
The Ozolith is pretty good. I think that it's a little bit harder to use. We'll talk about that later. But Ozolith, the Shattered Spire, as your copies 5 and 6 of Hardened Scales, plus the fact that you can tap it to be able to get your counter game started if you don't have any way to get counters on like a bad creature or something that's on the battlefield by itself, to just help you smooth that transition and make you not as all in on having a bunch of creatures all the time, was really good. There were a lot of times where I was like, recharging a ballista with Ozolith's activated ability, or, just being able to do kind of tricky things with that in order to restart my engine after I kind of either absorbed a whole bunch of interaction or got hit by a sweeper, or, even if I'm just doing something like slowly powering up an Inkmoth Nexus over and over again over a couple of turns to make it a really serious threat without having to expend a lot of cards to do that. The Shattered Spire was really impressive to me in the way that it worked. The Ozolith itself, that card is such a lightning bolt or lightning rod that people are just killing it or killing all the creatures as soon as I got Ozolith out. So it's a little bit harder to really get a bunch of value out of the Ozolith all the time. But when you do, it's wild, of course. Like the truly crazy plays that come out of this deck have to do with, like, I'm going to sack a Ravager that has 5 counters on it, and then those counters go on the Ozolith and they go on my Walking Ballista, and then combat starts, and then those 5 counters go back on the Walking Ballista, and suddenly you have like a 12-12 instead of a 2-2. Like, that stuff happens. It's just, it almost felt like kind of win more sometimes, where it's like the card doesn't really do anything unless you're rolling. It just really helps you close it out. I suppose it gives you like a little bit of redundancy against interaction against your creatures dying, but you have to have another creature in order to really take advantage of it. So it can be hard to get the engine restarted then.
And one thing that's really nice about it as well is when you have the next card on your list, Agatha Soul Cauldron, just having stuff that puts more counters on it, or like if you have a creature that doesn't have a counter on it, like a Nexus or something, and just being able to get, or the Shattered Spire, of course. And then as far as the Ozolith itself, like when you're going off with Scales, even if your opponent's killing all of your creatures, when you have a Scales in play, you're still kind of climbing up the ladder at those times. So it's like, even if you start with 1 counter, you go 2 on a creature, they kill it. Next turn it's 3, next turn it's 4, so on and so forth. So it just kind of, every removal spell they cast, it's just getting worse and worse for them.
Yep. But we'll talk about some of the problems with that game plan for Scales as well that comes up. But Agatha Soul Cauldron is the next thing on my list. So this is the card that I wanted to play. There's not a ton of games where I got a hold of this card. I think I only played it in maybe 3 of the 10 games or so, 10 or 11 or 12 games that I played. However, like, Walking Ballista plus this card is totally bananas. It's just an unbelievable thing. Like, you play a Walking Ballista, you sacrifice it, then all of your creatures are Walking Ballistas, or, but the other thing about it is, like, you can use the Hangerback Walker ability. There's not really that many abilities that you can add to your creatures from Agatha Soul Cauldron. It's mostly Walking Ballista, Ravager's sack ability, and Hangerback Walker's activated ability. That's kind of it for the deck, but they're all really good and really powerful and helpful. Of course, Walking Ballista kind of takes the cake from all of those. But the thing that was the most interesting to me is that, similar to what impressed me about the Shattered Spire, the Ozolith the Shattered Spire, is this is even better in a sense, because it's a no mana activated ability that adds counters to your creatures. So sometimes I was just using Soul Cauldron like that. I don't even care what abilities it's adding to things. I just played it as a 2-drop, and then it's like, oh, I really need to get another 2 counters on this Walking Ballista. So I'll tap this. I'll add 1 by eating a creature, and then Hardened Scales goes off, and then boom, I get 2 counters instead, and my Walking Ballista is powered up again. I mean, that was enough for the card to be good almost on its own, plus the ability to turn everything to a Walking Ballista just made it like insane. But I do see why this deck only plays 2. Like, you don't really need it the way that maybe like Yawgmoth would consider playing 3, because there's so much going on with the activated abilities there, and it's a combo kill there. It's only a medium combo kill here, because one of the biggest combo kills, of course, with in Hardened Scales has to do with Inkmoth Nexus, like being able to do a quick Inkmoth Nexus powered up to 10 and attack somebody. Soul Cauldron only helps with that a little bit. It kind of helps with your plan B, but Walking Ballista is your best piece of interaction. It's one of your best threats, and so I can kind of see, but it makes a ton of sense in this deck, and it's another piece that helps make it makes a lot of the harder parts of this deck's game plan like smooth out the rough edges in those spots. And then the last thing is just, this is the first time I played Urza's Saga in probably, I don't know, a few months. Urza's Saga is a good card.
Good card. Still. Known good card.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, known good card.
Really good one.
It's surprising to me that when you look at the top end of Modern right now, the 2 decks that are playing Saga are just Titan and Scales. And then there's not a whole lot other than that, especially with Hammer Time being on the wane. So I'm a little surprised that there isn't a deck that is pushing more clearly into the top end of the tier decks based on Urza Saga, but maybe it's just that the whole metagame beyond Scam is so flat that this is just kind of like where it's at, and all those decks that are kind of B tier are sort of a little interchangeable at the moment. But Urza Saga, still amazing, in case you were wondering.
Love that card.
Yeah.
Some of the food decks have been playing it too. I played a couple of the like the Lonus combo decks, and they take pretty good, they take pretty good advantage of it.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the stuff that stuck out to me as being a problem with this deck. One is, we kind of touched on it. Math is hard. Okay, like I'm a little worried about playing a deck like this in paper. You have to be able to keep track of things and make sure you really know your interactions. Sitting there for a while on like turn 3 and going, can I kill someone? Or turn 4, I guess, like very early in the game still, feeling like I think there's a way for me to activate this Inkmoth Nexus and get it to 10 counters, but I'm not sure I'm totally seeing it right now. What happened with the one that I had, the one time that I did it, was I had a God, what's the name of the 0 mana artifact that regenerates? I'm suddenly blanking on the name of the card. Like
Welding Jar?
Yeah, Welding Jar. Yeah, so it's like I had Welding Jar out, and my opponent was on burn. They had 2 red mana open on my turn, and I had a Ravager out. I had a couple of creatures out. I had a Welding Jar out. I had an Inkmoth Nexus and Hardened Scales, and I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, they're going to kill me next turn. And I was like, oh, wait, no, I can kill them right now. And so I started going through the sequencing, and the thing that I messed up was, instead of sacrificing Welding Jar to Ravager to get counters on my Inkmoth Nexus, I sacked it, so regenerate it, and it tapped it. Yeah, which I'm not totally sure that I could have worked out the sequencing, because in order for my opponent to get me, they had to have 2 lightning bolts there, and they did have 2 lightning bolts, and I was at 7 life, so they needed to have when their turn went back, they needed to have Lightning Bolt and Boros Charm, which they had, by the way. So the thing that I messed up was I probably should have just gone through all of my sack sequence, even though I knew that they could have killed my Inkmoth Nexus with all the counters on it, just to get that other Lightning Bolt out of their hand and try to fade them, drawing another burn spell for a little bit to try to survive. But
maybe
it was tough. It was a tough moment there. That was the loss where I was like,
the misclicks hurt.
Yeah. Well, that was just a rules like thing. I just totally forgot that when you regenerate something, it taps, because it doesn't really come up a lot. Okay. You know what I mean? So anyway, so that was hard. Like, sequencing in this deck is hard. I think it would just take practice, but I think it's pretty cool at the same time. The weirdest thing to me about this deck is the sideboard actually felt like really bad. I don't think there's that many great options for sideboard cards here, and I think that the builds that I've seen floating around, and these people are doing well in challenges, so like, who am I to judge? But they don't really have a ton of graveyard hate, so maybe they must think the Scam matchup is pretty good, because they're not bringing in anything that really helps you keep things in the graveyard or anything like that. They just have Dismember to be able to help kill a Fury, basically, or in the hopes that you don't get blown out by one. But like, the sideboards don't make a ton of sense to me, so I want to spend some more time studying exactly what they're trying to do with the cards that are in the sideboard right now. And then the last thing is just interaction. Obviously, this deck has like no interaction other than Walking Ballista.
Yeah.
Main. And so that's a little bit tough as well, feeling like you're in a format that is really defined at this point by really, really good interaction, like having almost none and just trying to like go on your plan has been a little bit challenging as well. But
yeah, you're kind of just trying to ignore what they're doing and hope that your plan is better than theirs.
Yeah. But your plan is so fragile that it's like that there are aspects of it that are very fragile. So you're kind of like, oh, I really wish that I had a little bit of a backup plan somewhere, but we'll see. But anyway, that's my take on Hardened Scales after one league of a deck that we haven't talked about a ton over the years, but it's still there and is still pretty good, I think.
Dave, I got to say, I'm looking at a sideboard right now, and I see one copy of Karn, Sign of Urza. Did you play that one?
I did not play a Karn, Sign of Urza. That's pretty spicy.
Okay. I found a good sideboard card for you.
Okay. What do you think that does for you? Anything in particular? I guess it lets you draw cards.
I would imagine like good against Scam.
Yeah.
Well, I use good in quotation marks because like how good can a 4-mana Planeswalker be if they're killing the rest of your stuff? I think the biggest issue, because we're talking about that matchup in general. I don't know. Like I know I've heard Spike talk about this a lot where he says he thinks he's favored against Scam. And I don't know if that's like Scales being favored against Scam or if that's Aspiring Spike being favored against Scam. Because, I mean, if you look at the deck list, like the card specifically that worries me is Dothy Voidwalker, like shutting off Hangerback, Sabaz, Arcbound Ravager, like all of this stuff that it shuts off. And that's like a really key part of the matchup is being able to like, move those counters around and get guys off Hangerback Walker. So I don't know if that matchup is actually good. I know you played against it a couple of times.
Yeah. I mean, I beat the straight Scam list in a good like grindy matchup. Like it was a good interactive kind of matchup. The zoo list was tougher because their threats honestly are so much better. So when they're not scamming, they're playing the domain creatures, and that's what I really had like no answers to. I was like, oh, you played a 5/5 on turn 2. Cool. Give me a minute and I'll get to an 8/8 if I survive, if I draw the right cards. I did have some sick plays against that deck though, where they attacked in with I just had one of those plays where, like, I don't know if they didn't realize how many things I could sacrifice or what I could do to make a ballista huge with a Hangerback Walker on the board or what was happening. But, like, they attacked in with several creatures, and I just, like, blocked and killed all of them and still had my Hangerback Walker and everything left over afterwards. And it was kind of like, oh, yeah, that's why this deck is fun.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe, like, I know you mentioned the lack of interaction. Like, what if we just main deck Dismember?
Yeah.
Like, is Dismember that bad? It hits a lot of decks, especially Scam.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Obviously, there's not a ton of space. Main deck, I will say one of the cards that was and this is going to sound absurd, but one of the cards that actually did not come in that handy for me was Ancient Stirrings. Like it always felt like I was kind of drawing like equivalent cards. That's probably just running bad with them or running mediocre with them, because a 1-mana cantrip, like where you get to look at 5 cards, like that's pretty, like on rate, that's impossible to beat. So
basically just 1 minute demonic tutor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Maybe I just don't know what to be looking for still. And so it kind of felt like, hey, these are all just a bunch of artifacts. Which one do I want? I guess it's always take Arcbound Ravager is probably the answer. But yeah, I think I would give this one another shot though, for sure. Devon, do you think this deck is like medium? Do you think it's real in the format, or what do you think about it?
I don't know. There was one of the challenges I think had 2 in the top 8, 6 in the top 32 is the Saturday challenge. I think the first Saturday challenge. So it's putting up really good numbers online. I mean, I swear I've tried to play this deck so many times, and for the life of me, there's just something that my brain just can't compute this kind of stuff. And I don't know. It's like you need a lot of practice with decks like this.
For me, it feels a little bit like Prowess, so it like scratches that itch for me as well, where it's like, oh, I'm going to cast a bunch of cheap spells and have all these little micro interactions. And like, I kind of like that kind of magic. So yeah.
Not my thing. I mean, I think I kind of want it to be. But like Devon said, or as maybe like Teen Talk Barbie said, math class is tough. It's tough, man. I don't know.
I don't like math.
It's not, well, what's funny is it's a combination of a variety of factors, right? It's math plus like consistent sort of board state and draw outcomes where you're just kind of like, if I do this, then like this could happen. And if I draw into this, or if I draw into this, then you have to deal with the permutations in your brain. And I think for like a league, that's probably like fun and cool and good. But maybe like over the course of like a longer tournament, I would probably feel a little bit wiped out. But maybe it becomes second nature, like Amulet Titan or something like that, where you just kind of know your basic lines. When you get, based on like the number of counters and what you have in play, like what you can get to and how much damage you can do and stuff like that. So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this term is going to make any sense, but like battlefield management, you're just managing a lot of game pieces, and there's a lot of stuff to keep track of.
Yeah, which sometimes is something I like, and sometimes is something that just feels really overwhelming, right?
Just give me some lava spikes.
I like managing 2 to 3 battlefield pieces, which is 2 rhinos.
It's just the 1 ring and a bowmaster. Like that's it.
Two rhino tokens and a
Shieldred.
Shardless agent. That's all I need.
Yeah. All right. Do you guys want to take a minute and talk about cards, or we want to stop here?
I think there's one that you have in here. One is Cavern of Souls, right? Right. Of course, we sort of hinted that we would eventually talk about this. Might as well talk about it. And
all I have to say about Cavern of Souls is I really never thought they would print this card in Standard again.
Me neither. Kind of crazy.
It's totally crazy to me. I I mean, I am glad that I'm going to finally get to like finish my playset for whatever weird tribal deck I want to play someday in the future, I guess. I have 2 Cavern of Souls that I've paid, $1 zillion for at one point in time. At least now it'll probably be less than $1 zillion to buy Caverns, I'm assuming, but
who knows?
We'll see. We'll see. I don't think it's going to be good in Pioneer, though. Like Devon, you kind of hinted on the show last week that you didn't think it was going to be that great in Pioneer, right? Like,
I mean, it'll at least be good, right? I mean, there are humans decks, there are spirits decks. Those are perfectly viable decks, and it can just plop right in there and maybe expand your range a little bit. Like maybe this gets you closer to an Orzhov humans deck or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So where I think, it's kind of like, this has 2 layers. So the first layer is the counter spells in Pioneer, just for lack of a better term, they suck. So I was looking at Guillaume Wafotap's list, and maybe this is an extreme example, but for those wondering, the counter spells he played was 3 Sinister Sabotage, 3 Negate, and 2 Change the Equation. So no copies of Make Disappear, none of that stuff, and he was playing blue-black. So it's like, the counter spells are just in the format are just not that good to begin with. So I think that Cavern of Souls, a lot of people associate that with like, I'm going to play against the, my opponent's blue-white control deck in Modern and get to resolve all my creatures. They're not going to get to counter my spells. And that's not what's going to happen in Pioneer. What I think it does enable is I think it's going to enable 2 very important things. One is 5-color humans. So there has been a lot of people who have tried this in the past where it's like you have a setup of Experiment 1, what's the other? The Hopeful Initiate. So Experiment 1, Hopeful Initiate, and then your 2s are like Lieutenant, Pack Leader, Jirina, which is the Aftermath card, and then your 3s are Mantis Rider, General Kudro, and then you top the curve off with Coco. But it's like, you don't have enough rainbow or you don't have enough mana fixing to facilitate all of these like Mantis Rider plus black cards plus green cards. And I think Cavern of Souls, even though your opponent's not going to be trying to counter your spells, it's just fixing your mana is really good.
Am I right in thinking that there's 12, there'll be 12 of these lands now? Right, in Pioneer,
that's correct.
Right? Because there's one in Neon Dynasty. There's the one in Ixalan.
Secluded Courtyard,
right?
Unclaimed Territory, and now Cavern of Souls.
I mean, you'll effectively have like 5-color modern humans besides Ziggurat, and you don't really need it at this point.
No, because the Secluded Courtyard, you don't really need it at this point anyway, right? So.
Yeah, so I like it there. I'm not 100% sure if Spirits is going to want to play a ton of these, at least the blue-white Spirits versions, because they don't really have problems with mana. Yeah, and they have a lot of counter spells, and Cavern does not cast the counter spells, and they're already playing 4 Mutavaults. So it's like, can you afford to play 8 effective colorless lands that don't cast your counter spells? I'm not sure that you can, but maybe if you're playing Banned Spirits, I could see it. But yeah, I think that humans is by far the place that I'm most excited for, just because of how much it actually expands.
Yeah. All right. Well, Cavern of Souls, known good card. We'll see where it ends.
Just don't play counter spells in Pioneer. If you're listening at home, that's your Pioneer advice. Don't play counter spels. They're terrible.
Worry.
Can I play Spirits with its little counter spells? Is that a better version?
Spellcrawler's not a counter spell. Come on, don't. Actually me.
I'm thinking about Mana Beak and Geistlight Snare and stuff like that. The good ones.
All right, those are fun.
Yeah. All right, next card. Galta, Stampede Tyrant, 5 generic, green, legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur, to 12/12, trample. When Galta, Stampede Tyrant enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. It's like have you not seen this card?
No,
you haven't seen this card.
The only thing I saw was Cavern.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
I do think there's only a couple cards, Devon. So there's only one more after this that I think is worth talking about. But this card, I mean, I'm so surprised that this card doesn't say when it enters the battlefield, if it's cast from your hand, that this trigger occurs, because this seems like some kind of crazy new cheat reanimation target of choice. I have no idea what the build is, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's legendary too, so you can Goryo's it.
Yeah, you got to Goryo's it.
Yes.
So
right.
You Goryo's it, and you have a bunch of other wild stuff in your hand. I mean, 12 trample, pretty decent amount of damage there. only could hit it with like Terminate.
Yeah.
It's just kind of weird because, like, okay, so let's assume that you have the ability to put a creature into your graveyard and a Goryo's Vengeance. So what is the upside of just dumping, like, if you have the ability to dump this and you still have an Atraxa in hand, what is the upside of just, like, dumping the Atraxa, right? Because it almost turns your Reanimate into a 3-card combo as opposed to a 2-card combo.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you have to find some kind of payoff for it.
It just feels like maybe it's like all of these things together in one deck, and then either one of them is good. Like whichever one goes in there is fine, and then whatever's in your hand is fine. And I don't know, but
yeah, I'm into this. I mean, it's an interesting target. It has a lot of power and toughness. It's a good, like, flingy type thing for the Calibrated Blast type decks. It's not amazing there, but certainly a big body.
I mean, what about like some kind of weird other build of everybody's favorite third tier Cascade deck, Glimpse of Tomorrow? So if you glimpse into this, you just get to dump whatever is in all of your token makers that are in your hand. You just get to like drop them in. That's probably not right, but I'm just saying there's other ways to cheat this thing and play Devon is
stroking his beard like a pirate.
I can't tell if it's approvingly or not approvingly.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a lot going on up here right now.
Are you thunking? Are you thinking?
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Thonking. This card seems like it's going to be, people are going to try to break it though. I mean, that's the highlight from this. People are going to try to break giant green creature. Newsflash.
This last one is one that I would talk about, Dave, in our real spoiler episode. And that's the Skullspore Nexus, 6 green legendary artifact. It costs X-Lex. This spell costs
X-Lax. Smooth move, X-Lax.
to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. We've seen text like this before. Whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness, each equal to the total power of those creatures. And then you can pay to tap it and double target creature's power until end of turn. So we have the very first thing, which is mana cheating ability in green based on creatures.
It's the Great Henge, right? Isn't this the line of text that's on the Great Henge?
Yeah, it's extremely similar, if not the same.
Greatest power.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same text, yeah.
So we have a cheaty thing for Great Henge, and then anytime one of your creatures dies, you get another creature back with the total power of those creatures.
One or more, right? So like, let's say if you have 2 3/3s and they kill your 2, like if they wrath your 2 3/3s, you just get a 6/6.
Exactly.
I believe. Yeah, okay.
But then if you have 2 mana open, you can double the power of one of your 3/3s, and then you get a 9/9 in that scenario as well. Because if then it's a 6/6 and a 3/3, and it becomes a 9/9.
Well, wouldn't you rather just get a 6/6 and then make it a 12/12 on your turn?
But if
you would just let the Wrath resolve, get a 6/6, then untap, activate it to make it 12/12. I guess you could just go double the 3, make it a 9, and then on your turn make it an 18. This is too much math.
And I thought you didn't like math, Devon.
Yeah. So this goes in Hardened Scales, is what we're saying?
Yeah, obviously. Wait. Oh my God, it's nuts with Ravager, right? So you make a big Ravager, you play this, then you sack the Ravager to itself, you get a big token, then you can like... I don't know. I lost my train of thought there.
I said that as a joke, but maybe it does go in Hardened Scales. Or maybe it goes with like, you know what other card I thought of a little bit with this that it goes with is, did you ever play any of those weird affinity lists that like Everett was into that had the Dreadnought that cost one mana?
Never tried it. I've seen them, but I never tried it.
I tried it, but at one time I'm kind of like, well, is there something that's just can't attack but has huge power and doesn't cost anything that you could, get your Skullspore Nexus and then sacrifice the creature that can't attack, like that kind of move out there as well. This card seems like there's a lot of angles. There's a lot of text on it, and it seems like it does some interesting stuff.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, like you said, any time that we see a card like this that has a mana cheating ability on it where you can cheat it out, you always got to keep an eye on those ones.
Yeah.
I can see it.
This card has
cool stuff you can do with
sick art too, by the way. Like it's one of the cool like showcase cards, I think, of the set right now anyway. But all right, those are the 3 cards that we have right now. Some interesting stuff.
Sweet.
And maybe we could talk more spoilers when we actually know what maps do.
Yes. Yeah, I did want to talk about Kellen. Like Kellen is a pretty interesting. It's a 2 mana 2/3 that does the go get reveal the top card of your library of its creature card, put it in your hand, otherwise put it into your graveyard, which is kind of like an interesting thing. But then it does create X map tokens where X is 1 plus the number of opponents who control an artifact for a single green. We obviously can't evaluate that until we know what a map token is. So, but
Based on the word map, my guess is it has something to do with scrying, but we'll have to see.
see, I was thinking it was expedition map. Like maybe it's 2 tap, go get a basic land out of your library or something. But
Could be.
we'll see.
We'll have to see.
Okay, Shane.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps up this week's show. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to the pod. You get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. It keeps our download numbers up. That's extremely helpful for our legion of sponsors that are flocking to our door. If you use Apple Podcasts, though, please leave us a rating and a review. And as you heard today, we have a lot of people giving us feedback on Spotify, and we will read those out. And it's just fun. It's fun to have a little interaction in that fashion where we can, I think, we should start asking questions every episode just so we have a little bit more of a dialogue there. That's fun. If you want to submit a question to us, however, you can reach out to us at X, at the Dive Down.
No. Twitter.
You can email the divedown@gmail.com. If you want to support us, of course, go to the Patreon, patreon.com/thedivedown, or check out the store at thedivedown.com/store. You can head on over to heavyplay.com to get some incredible deck and dice boxes and playmats featuring the EquipMag system. Use code TheDiveDown2023 for 10% off your order there. Shout out to Mana Traders, of course, helping keep us going with the affiliate code. You can sign up using that code TheDiveDown23 for 10% off of your first 2 months of running Magic Online cards. Get those shaving soaps, body soaps, fragrances, and more at Barrister and Man using code TheDiveDown23 for 15% off your first order there. And Nerd Rage Gaming gives listeners 8% off their order with code DIVE8. As always, thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and get those petaflops.